Hey guys, my name is Emma and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm giving you another one of my 360 reviews, which is where I talk about a book for 360 seconds and hope to give you a full 360 degree view of it. Today I'm talking about Ben Elton's Time and Time Again. So this was published in 2014 and sits firmly in the middle of Ben Elton's career. He is a very prolific writer with a lot of books to his name and is generally fairly well received. This is a sci-fi speculative historical fiction which is looking at what would happen if we could go back in time and stop the First World War. Fundamentally, that's the major plot point. It follows the story of Hugh, who is going to be sent back in time due to some kind of like overlapping of time that Einstein, was it Einstein or Newton, a big buzzword scientist's name, discovered would be the case and sealed all of the information in a box in Cambridge, and then it gets opened and they realise that they can send somebody back in time to June 1914. So they pick Hugh, who is an ex-soldier but a history buff, and they're going to send him back in time to stop the assassination of the Archduke of Franz Ferdinand, which is normally considered to be the real tipping point of what then sparked the First World War. As you can imagine with a time travel book, this is hysterically fun, very fast paced and highly entertaining. The strongest things I think about it are that it really leans into a lot of the tropes that a lot of sci-fi time-based books will try and avoid, and it doesn't even pretend to fix a lot of the problems that the genre will have. So the time travel is not particularly perfect. For example, the idea of like looping situations, because obviously when he goes back in time to 1914 and changes things, the initial event of him being able to go back in time is still in the future at that point. So when time then continues forward to that date in the future, somebody can then be sent back again. So it plays around with kind of the looping aspects of time travel that some authors will try and fix or gloss over. This one just really leans into that. It also does the same thing with its characters. I would describe every single character in this book as a typical characteristic of that kind of a character, just being turned up to 11. So Hugh isn't just an ex-soldier, he is really stereotypically an ex-soldier, real like tough guy marine that you would expect. There's a wonderfully quirky professor who we meet very early on at the beginning, who is the one who put him forward for this expedition, called McCluskey, which is a wonderful name in the first place anyway, and she is also a really archetype of that zany, slightly like manic, quirky professor, and so they really lean into these tropes, which I think is good. The plot is very intense and moves very quickly, which is one of the reasons why I think leaning into the character tropes is a good move, because it means that you get a strong sense of who everybody is very quickly, so you can then focus on the action. With so many of the traits that I'm describing of this book, they could either be considered a pro or a con dependent on your stance. So the plot is wacky and fun and absurd and has so many twists and turns and faintly ridiculous things that is something that you're either going to think is a roller coaster ride and highly entertaining, or you're going to think is a sprawling mess that makes no real sense. The characters being very archetypal is either poor characterization or a helpful trait to get to know them quickly so that you can jump in with the plot. The time travel problems are either a quirky, fun, parody-esque type look at time travel stories, or sloppy writing and sloppy world building from an author. It really depends on, I guess, how much benefit of the doubt you want to give Ben Elton and how willing you are to go along for the ride. I personally was very willing to go along for the ride and just treated this for the fun, light-hearted, highly entertaining, crossing genre type book that it is. But if you wanted to read it into more detail, you probably would be disappointed by it. I do think that it is very strong from a historical point of view. I think that it covers a lot of the bits of information about the First World War very well, but you don't need to have a crazy amount of background knowledge about the First World War to enjoy this book, because it gives you everything that you need in a fairly natural, organic way. On a deeper level, I do think that this book is very interesting when it comes to looking at time travel and time and humanity's desire to overlay a sense of order and cause and effect and regime over events that happen. So we do get some fun discussions about kind of hindsight, and if you could go back in time and change something, would you? And those whole butterfly effects ideas of, by changing one little thing of how things pan out, what unforeseen circumstances and events happen which are either better or worse than the ones before. I won't spoil the ending, but there is a lovely beat at the end that does cover this in a lot more detail, and I think is genuinely very, very interesting for it. I don't really have any recommendations for what this is like or where you can go if you enjoy this one and want to read something else. I think that literature is filled with time travel stories, and also stories revolving around either First and Second World War and speculative fiction of what if this had happened instead of that, like that counterfactual history idea. I guess one thing that could be quite interesting if you are keen on that discussion of turning points in history is there are some really lovely moments in the play The History Boys that does go into this in a bit more detail and discuss those big turning points in history and those really climactic moments and what would have happened if something else had been there instead. If you do have any recommendations for time travel books that you think do them quite well, and time travel looking at specifically going back into historical fiction, then please do let me know. I know Stephen King has one, but I've not read it. This is what I mean. I know that the marketplace has got lots of examples, but this is the first of its kind that I've really read. So that's it from me. I hope you found this review helpful. I will chat to you guys soon. Have a wonderful reading week. Bye!